Hi. Hi. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We'll start in just a few minutes here. We'll let everyone get logged in.
It's me, education team.
Hi.
Hello.
I like your haircut.
Thank you. Danielle did it. She made me promise her several times that I wouldn't be mad if it was a giant mess.
It looks beautiful.
Thanks. It's pretty simple. Just buzz everything that is not this. No fades, no nothing.
I don't think my husband would trust me with any kind of sharp equipment near his head. So, way to go, Andrew.
Just do it while he's asleep to prove your competence.
Frances got her first haircut this weekend.
Ooh, how'd that go?
Did it?
And Faye.
Good job.
We had a haircut weekend.
My mom cut my hair until I went to college. Like, it wasn't even a thing you did. She wasn't very good at it either. Yeah, perming. We did it all.
Yeah. Coloring.
Yeah. The hot rollers at night and like making it frizzy because it's about as straight as you can get. I have many high school pictures. With everybody working from home, this is nice. I can text my children if I need water instead of leaving. So I'm going to do that right now before we begin.
Okay.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. Kelly suddenly looks really mad. It's not us.
We got lots of links to share today. I should pull them all up, huh?
Yeah.
Probably. Because I haven't.
You have what?
I haven't pulled any of them up.
I'm going to do it and I'll share them as we talk.
Perfect. And thank you for everyone listening to us. We just got out of another meeting, so we're jumping right into this one and catching up.
We've got this. Piece of cake.
I think we should, I wish I could have created a poll. Add a question. Oh, I'm going to do it.
You can do it, Kelly. We have faith in you.
Oh, I can't do it.
Why not?
I don't know. If I hit poll and add a question, it just, think I have to do it before. I was going to see if what people were thinking their opening date for their library will be. It'd be
I can
something.
do it.
Did you get it, Donna?
Yeah.
Okay.
What should the responses be?
Are they good?
Mhm.
May, June, July?
Define open. I know.
Mm-hmm.
I can't turn my video on.
This happened to us the other day too.
Mm-hmm.
To all our listeners out there, you may think we're novices here with Zoom. We're not sure what's going on with video since everyone has started using it.
I guess we could say when you anticipate opening those doors and letting all the people in.
Okay, yeah, since I was doing it on the fly, it's really brief.
Somebody
No
said
fancy
define
words.
open. Somebody said define open.
Should I go? Well, that's true.
Yeah, like what is our idea of what open would look like at this point?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're going to talk about today. Hopefully we can get some feedback, not only from other partners, but, you know, just from what we're seeing in the news and all that sort of good stuff. Why can't dispense?
That's true, Bridget. There are so many great things that you can do at the library, even though the physical building is not open.
Oh, I should say to folks in the chat, make sure that as you're sending messages, you have the option to send that to all panelists or all panelists and attendees. If you're saying all panelists, we can see your comment and we can relay it to people, but nobody aside from us 5 ByWater people can see what you say. Yeah, that really should be, I anticipate that being one of the more interesting parts of the reopening process, is figuring out how to best sort of work that as a sliding scale. There was a lot of, we are fully closing, so that ended up being more often than not a pretty cut and dry thing. You know, I anticipate opening will be a lot more variable. On the other hand, with opening, we've had the luxury of really spending some time making plans and anticipating questions, which we didn't quite do with closing. That came very suddenly.
I know.
Yeah. Well, we are getting a ton of hellos in the chat box. If you want to share with the rest of the attendees that are in there, there's about, let's see, 40 of you. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
The education team has been putting together some blog posts, as Andrew mentioned. We've had a little bit more time to put some documentation together for when we all get to reopen. We have one major blog post that I posted in the channel to everybody that will link you out to all of the other blog posts. We've broken them out for you specifically for holds and notices and fines and circulation rules, because we've all known, since we've probably somewhat closed our doors a little bit, how things can be quite complex in this way. Lots of hellos.
Yes, I'm seeing lots of familiar names in our chat with welcomes, and I see Stephanie and Kate and Juan just popped in. All sorts of folks in here that have had the pleasure of spending such up close time with me. I know that I'm memorable for that reason, I'm sure. But it's so good to see everyone coming in and saying hi. Also Cedar Park. So curbside probably starts Monday, and no public programs all summer. And that's going to be one of the things that we are going to talk about is just not how do we help you and what processes do you need to be aware of as far as reopening your library, but also, you know, we're going to try and moderate some conversation amongst y'all as far as how do we, you know, what challenges do you think are going to be out there? What do you need to be aware of? I know that the four of us read a lot of literature from the library world as far as what we're seeing, and so we'll share some of those things that we've seen that you may or may not have seen yet, and just having those conversations. What I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll right now. I have no idea how this works because this is Kelly that does this usually. So I'm thinking maybe you see something on your screen that says, when do you think your opening date will be? And you can take opening as far as you would like it to be. So whatever you think that's going to be, go ahead and put your response in there. So we'll leave that up for just a minute or so and see how it goes. But we are happy to see everyone, and happy National Library Week and Library Workers Day. So hey, thanks to all the library workers. You know, I am actually a member of my local libraries board, and so just to give them the thanks, those staff are working in the building, even though the building's not open to the public. So I went ahead and dropped by some donuts for them this morning to help make their Library Workers Day a little bit better, since they don't have their customers. And my local library is really great, as all you all are, I'm sure, of welcoming new customers and making it really feel like a small town. So I do love that. So. Okay, looks like voting has kind of stopped. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, I guess. I've never done a poll before, so here's my first poll. I'm going to share the results. So it looks like most of y'all are expecting to do some sort of reopening in May. The next most popular response is, who knows? And I know a lot of that really does depend on the state and just kind of what's happening. And I know a lot of the things that I'm hearing is that it really is dependent on the local health departments and what they're deciding too. So that's a factor with it. So even though we may be ready to go and have everything in place, if our health departments or our states say no, then we don't. I know there's at least one other Florida person in here. Yes, Florida has reopened beaches for whatever bizarre reason. We don't have our libraries open yet, but hey, we've got beaches back open. So we'll see what happens as we continue moving things along with that. So everyone's doing good, right? Everyone's okay? I know we had this a few weeks ago and there was a little bit more anxiety because it was talking about the closing and there were so many things that were uncertain. So hopefully all of your loved ones and friends and family are doing well out there. I'm going to go ahead and Kelly and Andrew don't know I'm going to do this. So, but I'm going to ask each of them, and then Jay-Z, you'll get the third response of what do you think is going to be the #1 thing that people need to think about as we start this reopening process for libraries? So Kelly or Andrew, who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Jesse, you go first.
Well, I'm thinking outside of, you know, just Koha itself, but I think there's still going to be a lot of people that even though things may start to reopen, they are still not going to want to venture out of the house yet. And it'll be maybe a month or 2 or 3, who knows? We're so uncertain these days, you know, that they won't want to leave. So I think we'll have to keep building on this idea of we're still open. You know, we're open no matter what, even if you're not coming into the physical building, like pushing out. I've seen so many great things on social media that all of you are doing, like story times virtually, book recommendations on Facebook Live, you know, and just making it a virtual aspect as well as coming into the physical branch. So I think keeping that part of it alive and thriving is going to be a challenge, because once the doors open, you're going to have your regular work life, but you're still going to have to maintain that virtual presence as well.
Okay, great. Andrew?
And sort of along similar lines to what Jesse just said, yeah, I think this is an interesting opportunity to look at what was normal prior and think about how much of that do you want to go back to. Things like curbside pickup, have those been successful? Do you want to continue those? Or, you know, if you had some odd bit of your CERT policy that you suspended during this break, Do you want to go back to that, or do you want to take this opportunity to let that go? We've talked a lot about the assumption of going back to exactly where you were before you closed, and yeah, I guess I hadn't thought much until Jessie said what she said about the idea that, oh yeah, maybe we don't want to go back to exactly the status quo. Maybe this is a chance to look at that and think about what that could be.
Great. Kelly?
I can say that I'm very, very jealous of all the libraries offering curbside pickup, home delivery. Somebody just put in the chat. It truly is victorious for me to watch you all do this, because my library's not. But it makes me know that libraries out there will continuously adapt to where it's needed, what is needed, and that it's still important to offer any type of services to their library. So it is one of those feelings of like, we rock because, or you all rock because you've continued to make yourself relevant and important, as we all know we have been, but it's really truly been one of those moments of like, yeah, you know what, libraries are still like offering so many more services than other places. I just want to cry, but like seriously, I'm going to move 20 y'all's towns because I don't have anything. But in the last reopening or the closing town hall we did, somebody mentioned a book service to buy like reduced price. Well, yes, we have purchased many books now from that service because we don't have the opportunities. But so I just want to say, when we do get to that point where we're able to go forward in opening our doors in any way, that you all have learned so much on what to do that's working. And that's the most important part, is we've been given the time to say, let's try this. We have the opportunity and we have the skills. So.
Yeah. And we're seeing that same sort of thing coming through the chat. Like Amy had said that they started offering home delivery service through the mail, which is really, really popular. And that's a great thing. And then Juan said exactly, hi Juan, said exactly the same thing that I know a lot of libraries are thinking of. You've kind of been forced to offer services of things that we probably should have been doing all along. And so now the trick is to sustain them. And that's a really good point of, how do we do that? We do mention some of that in our blog posts too. I do like Nancy's idea. Nancy, you get a gold star. Where's my gold star? Nancy gets a gold star, says now's a good time to dump fines.
So, yeah, I want to go look at Andy Woodworth's and libraryfines.info.
Yes. And the other thing too, and actually Catherine just beat me to it, is auto renewal. We have had a lot of libraries turn on auto renewal, and it's going to be, speaking from the public library perspective or from a patient perspective, I think that's going to be hard for me to swallow as a customer that you turn that back off. It's a great convenience and absolutely love it. So, if the libraries are going to turn those back off, what sort of things are going to have to be dealing with? So I do think that, Catherine says auto renew is the most popular thing she's done in over 30 years of library service. Yeah. It's fantastic. It really is. Computer usage, I think, is going to be huge. We all know that, libraries are the first place that people go to when they need help, particularly for computers. I know the ALA even put out a notice of some sort, encouraging, like a statement of policy saying, leave your Wi-Fi on, and if you can, extend it, to greater areas so people can at least come to the parking lot and do that one. A lot of local rules that we do have to consider as we're going through that. Yeah, Kate, your folks are just special, I think. No, it's, what we actually do hear that. We do hear some libraries that don't, want to do that auto renew. However, I will tell you that in 1911, there is the option to opt out of auto renewals. So you can turn it on the system.
It's not even 1911. It's on your Koha right now.
Yeah.
Bridget asked if we could stop and introduce ourselves, which is fair. We just started talking. So hi, I'm Andrew. I'm one of the educators here at ByWater. And I'll let everyone else introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Kelly. I'm one of the educators as well.
I'm Jessie. I used to be an educator. Now I do marketing and outreach and education still.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm Donna. I'm the third educator here at ByWater. Thanks, Bridget. You know what it is because we all just came out of another meeting. We all just kind of kept going the same way we were. So sorry about that. So I do see that there is a question about is there a limit to auto renewal? Your auto renewal follows those same rules that you already have in place on your circ and fine rules. So if you only let patrons renew things twice, auto renewal does not override that. And auto renewal does not also override if there's a hold or anything like that. It follows all of your same rules for renewals. It just does it automatically instead of the patrons having to do it or you have to do it for your patrons. I know we've got some blog posts on that somewhere. I'm not sure where.
Yeah, we'll link that in the chat. I think Jesse's on it.
Let's see, going back through the school. So Sarah, what you say is a really common thing. We've turned so many things off that you want to keep systems kind of invisible when reopened. And that is one of the things that we do talk about in our blog posts, is that there's a lot of things you need to do before you kind of turn everything back on again. And as always, for ByWater partners, let us know. We are more than happy to help you with all of that. Probably the most important thing, and we mentioned this I think like 12 times in one of our blog posts, is you have to clean the message queue out before you start it back up again, because otherwise all of those notices from the last month are going to be sitting in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out here. It's kind of like, oh, hello, kitty. I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out here. It's kind of like the elephant in the room. It will probably be a little painful when you reopen. Because there's going to be a lot to think about. As you know, you're not just dealing with your ILS, you're also dealing with your patrons and your staff and your materials and all of those sorts of things. So, you know, there will be some bumps along the way, but remember, we're here for you and we're going to help you with that. So don't worry about it. Tell us what you need. You know, don't be like we typically are as adults when we're doing reference interviews and we just tell the librarian what we think we want. Tell us what you really need and let us help you with that. So, you know, don't worry about that. That's what we're here for. Sandra does mention the bulk edit for renewals. Yeah, that was a great example of the Koha community of, you know, worldwide recognized there was a need. They got that code in there, they got it QA'd, they got it pushed, we got it out to our partners. So you can go in there and do those bulk edit of those due dates and things like that. And we're also happy to help do that too. So we're more than happy to do those sorts of things.
We had one question in the Q&A that I think kind of pivots off of what Donna was talking about. An anonymous attendee asked, what do you think will be the most challenging aspect of reopening? Which, yeah, there will be some tough things. Personally, what I'm most concerned about is the libraries where the librarians or ByWater or together, we made a lot of changes and not necessarily in places that were logged, because not everything in Koha gets logged. And we definitely tried to be clear in tickets, this is what we have changed in, say, your circ rules. But there's nothing in Koha that remembers your circ rule was this and we changed it to this. Other things get logged, like changes to your system preferences. That's relatively easy. Those are in your action logs. But there will be stuff where it's going to be a process of trying to remember, what did we change? What did this do before? And it's solvable, but if we didn't take good notes, then it's going to be harder.
Oh, I didn't say the right message. And that's the thing, is the most challenging aspects. I mean, there's so many different things. And again, we put these blog posts out specifically talking about the ILSs and things like that. But you know, somebody did bring up a point of how do you balance the reopening of the library with the care and concern for not only your patrons, but also your staff. You know, we know we're all dealing with folks that have a various range of, you know, illnesses, conditions, whatever the case may be, of how do we go ahead and make that balance, and how do we do it in a way that is safe. And I know this is something that we're all struggling with. So if any of y'all have those answers, please, you know, or if you have those ideas. The census that I'm getting, I'm curious to see what else other folks have said that. Actually, let me go back through this and say, so Jessica, Yay, Jessica, you get a gold star too. Made a working document with screen captures to note each change that she made. That's, that's one of those things that we did, encourage people to do, is to keep track of those sorts of things. Mm-hmm.
I also would recommend, if you did not do that, you can certainly send a ticket to support and just ask for all your closed tickets and be able to link out and have that for future reference. Because again, your systems librarian may have put in a ticket about one thing, and then your circulation librarian put in a ticket about another thing, and you want to be able to keep all that information, so when the time comes to open, you can say, okay, these are the changes that we made through these tickets. And even having that documentation to be able to refer back to what Andrew said, what was the process of doing that, or what somebody in systems said. So definitely reach out to us, and if you did not do that, we'd be happy to help you get that information.
Karen is asking for the bulk item renew. Do we have money minutes on that, right?
We have bulk due date changes, not
yeah,
renew.
so.
Yes, yep, and we'll get that. We'll get that.
Back up
She's got a bunch of stuff that was supposed to be due today.
Back up the scroll a bit. Deb Stevenson from Dubuque, Iowa, the coolest library, asked how much lead time we need to change the messaging queue. I assume you mean to get the queue turned back on and mark items to not send if they've piled up while you were closed. That's a tough one. I'm going to say probably a couple days to be safe. It's none of those changes are complicated, but again, I'm wary of the general idea of a lot of folks asking for that same change all at the same time.
Nancy says they are creating a reopening document with the correct order for things to happen. We don't want staff checking in and then trapping holds before you're ready. And that's a really good point. And that's one of the things that we try to talk through in our blog posts too, is think through your process. What needs to be done first, and then what needs to happen, and then what needs to happen after that. Because you don't want to be sending out, like for instance, just an example, you don't want to be trapping holds if your notices aren't going out, because then you're going to have to find a way to send all those notices out again. So just kind of think through that process. We are more than happy to brainstorm with you and kind of walk through. A lot of times it's easier to have someone who's not involved with it to kind of look at your process and go, well, what about this? So, we're here to help you with that too. Had a great response from patrons with the account expiration notices. They quickly reply and can renew them remotely. That's a really good call too. That was one of those things that we thought about when we were kind of doing that reopening, of figuring out what other notices kind of go out that some libraries may need to be aware of. Karen just found that the item edit on YouTube. Excellent. Okay, and who's sharing? I don't know who's sharing.
I am. Well,
okay.
Would you like me to share, Donna? I thought we could like jazz up our screen. Who wants to look at us all day? That's for sure.
So Sarah asks the question, do you think it's a good idea to change to using the long overdue notices process before we reopen?
I like it myself. So we have a new tool in Koha 1905 that lets us schedule really custom emails to send to your patrons based on a report. And the link Sarah linked in the chat is to a blog post I wrote about using that instead of your overdue notices to tell people when things have gone to long overdue, which is a not difficult change, but it's a real shift in sort of how you think about your notices. So this is actually, if you've been not sending overdue notices for a while, this is probably a good time to jump on that and make that change.
Okay. Jessica has a question that they will need to do a thing of returned materials before they reopen to the public. What is the recommended way to suspend holds, and not really suspending holds, but not trapping holds when they're checking things in?
Koha checks your circ rules when you check something in to see if a hold is legal. It will not capture an illegal hold or a disallowed hold. So
Couldn't you
I
hit
would want to
ignore?
think about this a little more and double check it, but my first thought would be, I mean, there's a pretty big switch you can flip in your circles to say holds are not allowed. Check everything in and then switch it back. But we may have better options for that.
Couldn't you hit ignore when you check in the items?
You could, but then you're clicking ignore every time. I think we
But then
could
you
maybe
don't
even work out
know.
jQuery to just ignore them all. That we would put in for just as long as you needed it to check all those things in and then take it back out again.
I'm one not to change my circles. So if I would have
Yeah.
to hit ignore, I think I would do that. And then they live in the holds queue, and then you can go grab them when you're ready to start pulling and checking them in and starting those hold notifications again.
Yeah, I would avoid changing circles if you can. That just always is going to come back and be a challenge because there's no way to bulk update those circles. So you're going to have to do them one at a time. But yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards that jQuery idea.
But again, data can suspend all your holds. So if you knew holds were any pending holds, they can push those suspend days to say any pending holds, so those aren't triggered, push those back a week, and then all your circulation, those will be suspended holds, so they won't actually trigger. So we could do that too.
So Kelly, you're saying suspend, like if I'm going to reopen my library on May 4th, I could say go ahead and suspend all holds until May 6th.
Right.
That's an interesting idea too. Okay. Stephanie mentions that they are looking at using the idea of the quarantine. We are seeing more folks that are doing that where they want everything put aside for 72 hours. Let us know. Andrew has a great blog post on doing that. We've come up with some different ways too. If you don't use cart to shelf, we have a new process that you can use cart to shelf for that also.
We ran into a bit of a complication with that quarantine process I laid out because we realized that even though we're putting a not for loan value on those items as they get checked in, they're still triggering holds. So we're working on a patch to change that. We tried one avenue and it didn't work as well as we thought it might. So we're poking around. And I see Catherine had asked specifically about that because she had helped sign off on the first patch. So Catherine, I owe you an email about that, but we do have a path forward on that.
But like I said, and so actually this probably would even work for libraries that are using cart to shelf too. We've discovered that you can go ahead and instead of it calling it like, cart, you can rename that in authorized value and call it quarantined or whatever you want to call it. And that cart to shelf process will still function with those 72 hours. And so you can set that, so that it sits in quarantine for 72 hours and then it's updated. And we do have reports that will go along with that too, that will show you how to do that if you do that 3 days. Book drop mode is a great way to do it too. Karen says that they set it aside for 72 hours and then use the book drop mode. Cart to shelf is an automatic process. That anything automatic with computers is going to have some challenges sometimes. But if you have the space just to be able to set things aside for 3 days, go for it. That works too. Everything we do is really what works well for your library and what makes the most sense for you. What we always come back to. Okay, so holds, lots of things to think about. One of the things you do want to make sure of is that you don't have all of your holds or your pending holds expire on the same day, or that you tell all 4,000 of your patrons that they have to come in the first 2 days to pick their holds up. So kind of think about dates when you're doing that. Let us know how we can help with those sorts of things. You did the work on notices. Any advice about notices that we haven't covered yet?
No, as Andrew, Deb really asked the big question is what's the lead time? Now, if we have suspended your process message queue, we would want to give it some lead time to say, okay, let's go ahead and take everything that's sitting around and make that not to go out prior to going forward. So that's the most important thing to remember. And we go into a lot of details with the notices blog post is there are so many things that we could have changed, but the main part is we really want to clean that out. And that's a ticket to us to say, hey, we'd like to start this process. with this date in mind, and where do we go from there? But yes, cleaning out the message queue is probably the most important. And as Andrew said, some lead time is kind of important, a couple of days. And even with everybody pushing bulk due dates to a specific date, you really could overload your message queue if you turned it on prior to opening, because all those libraries will get an advance due if that's what you have set up. And that's a lot of messages outside of your norm. So we even probably encourage you to I've loved seeing all the newsletters come, because we get it too. So using a constant contact or a MailChimp to say, remember, we'd love to see you, but not all the same day. And then wait till you open and then start sending out those item due, advance due notices, versus trying to do it prior, because that's just might eventually put you, and you might have heard this from us when you were closing, put you on a spam list, because if you're outside the norm of what you're sending through Koha, you most certainly could be put on a list, and you do not want to be put on a list, because it's not an easy thing to get off that list. It's not a good list to be on. So that's another thing to think about is it important? Is it something we could do as a constant contact to say, hey, we're opening, your due date is this date, call us, go online, renew if you want, and then go forward with that.
So just in very broad strokes, and this is outlined in our blog post too, really what you're going to be doing is you are going to update your system preferences. So if you turned off the ability to place holds, if you turned off fines at the master control switch, all of those sorts of things, you're going to turn those back on. You're going to go through and make sure that your circulation and fine rules have been set back to where they were supposed to be if you change them. You'll want us to clean up your message queue. We'll go ahead and turn back on your cron jobs, such as your message queues, your holds notifications, your expirations, all of those sorts of things. Send out notices using the patron emailer as needed. And then make sure you test everything. For those of you that have gone live recently, you've already gone through this in the not too distant past of trying everything out and making sure it works. For those of you that have not gone live recently, it's probably been a while since you've gone through the test plan. But the idea is to check things out, trigger holds, make sure everything is working as expected before your first folks start walking through that door. So that's kind of the big ones, the big strokes for those sorts of things. Fines is a big one. So in our blog post on the fines, we do have some jQuery posted in there that you can use temporarily that will mark that little forgive fines checkbox while you're doing all of your batch uploads and things like that. So that may be something to think about, because otherwise you do have to make sure you check that box if you think that someone maybe is going to have fines. You want to make sure that they're not charge fines, things like that. But definitely think about your fines process. I know we've extended due dates for a lot of folks. We've made some changes as much as we can, but just kind of be aware of those sorts of things. To be able to go ahead and waive those fines or things like that. Something really, really important for y'all to think about, or two things for y'all to really, really be aware of. We are not going to be able to go into your fines and custom change them. Like if you say to us, we don't want to charge fines for just DVDs or something like that, we are not going to be able to do that for you. There's no clean way for us to be able to do it in the best of times. Let alone with what we're dealing with now. So we would be able to go in and say, we're going to wipe out all fines for March 1st through March 30th. We can definitely do those sorts of things, but we can't kind of pick and choose which ones we're going to be able to do. The other thing to really remember, and this is something that I always kind of have to think about as I'm going through testing scenarios, fines are calculated at the check-in point based on your circulation rules as they exist at that moment that you check that item in. Okay, so just think that through for a minute. If I had a different circ rule in place where I was charging $1 a day and I changed that to $0 while something was checked out, that patron's not going to be charged $1, they're going to be charged $0. So just kind of keep that in your mind as you go through that, is that it applies the fines at the moment of checkout according to your circ rules. Okay. Or you can just go ahead and forgive all fines and go to fine free, which would be really awesome. So Anyways, I'm going to scroll back just a little bit because I saw something coming through that I wasn't able to read. Catherine is going to gamify returns and spread them out. And so they made social media posts that say, if your name starts with A, B, and C, return this week. I love that idea. That's a great way to be able to do that. Amy asks, do we have any one-pagers for patrons using lists and hold features through the ILS? Oh, and Jessie already responded. Oh, Jessie is so amazing, isn't she? Just love her. Andrew, you did a lot on circulation and fine rules. You're kind of our expert on that. So what
prospect?
What guidance do you have, or what tips do you have for folks as we move to this reopening process?
As you already said, remember that most of that data gets really checked in the moment. So whether or not something can renew or how long it will renew for is checked at the moment you click that renew button, or fines are calculated at the moment the item is returned. So if you're changing circ rules, be aware that that really is, most of those changes are going forward. So you had talked about if your fine amount changes during the checkout period. If you had stuff that got checked out before you closed and then you set all your circ rules to no fines, and now that you're reopening, you change the circ rules back to what your fines were before, that in and of itself is not causing those items to not end up with fines for the whole period you were closed. It can be a bit more complicated than that. You need to get it to look at your calendar, and you need to make sure your calendar shows that you were closed. It takes a little bit of careful reading through, I guess, and really thinking about it as a process. And if nothing else, I would say just always remember it's going to take the most specific rule it can, which is not always as obvious as you might want it to be. That can definitely take some fine-tooth comb picking through your rules to figure out exactly which rule applied when, especially when you get into multi-library systems where those libraries have different circ rules.
Yeah. And Cynthia did ask, we do not charge fines for days closed. What about setting calendar days to closed for the period the library is closed to avoid fine charges? Yes, Cynthia, that is one of the cleanest way to do things. If you're already set that you're not charging fines on days you're closed, make all those days on your calendar, on your library calendar closed, and they're not going to get charged fines for those. So that's a very, very clean way to be able to do that. And something to think about, you know, people do worry about, well, if I set my library as closed, don't worry about it. There's very few ramifications for that. It really does come more in with things like due dates and stuff like that. And that's a very broad stroke, because I know that Kelly's already thinking from her face. She's like, well, I can name 3 things that that affects.
And also that calendar can be set retroactively. Again, because your fines are calculated when the item is returned. At that check-in, Koha looks back and says, okay, of the days this was checked out, on which of those days were you open and which days were you closed?
Thank you, Andrew, because that's why I was making a funny face.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's good.
So again, lots that we can help you with, lots of information on, you know, the ILS aspect of it. Just a couple of things that I'll start with, and I'll go to Andrew and Kelly and Jay-Z too, of just what things that you've seen in the library world. One of the things that I'm seeing a lot of is something that somebody had mentioned earlier, is that balancing between public safety, staff safety, and staff's mental health as they're dealing with this. So, you know, I'm not going to get into any more beyond that, other than just say, be aware of it. You know, there's a lot of strain on everybody, not just, you know, from personal life, but also dealing with the public. We are all librarians. We love what we do. We got into this, well, I got into this for the fame and the money, right?
Yeah.
You know, I became a librarian because that's what my heart tells me to do. And so it is really challenging that you're being torn in a lot of different directions. So just kind of be aware of that, that your staff are going through a lot of things. So that's kind of my PSA. And I'm seeing a lot of that in the media too, of being aware of that. A lot of anxiety about libraries reopening and staff not sure what to do and how to do and those sorts of things. So Kelly, Andrew, Jay-Z?
Well, Donna, and that's why ByWater is here. I mean, we have 4 people to answer your question. So we may not know the answer. We do not expect you to know the answer. So that's why you have us. Use us. Ask the questions. I made a face because I didn't realize what Andrew already knew. So collaboratively, we know the answers, but we do not expect you to ever go, well, I shouldn't ask because this may be an obvious answer. 100%. This is all about you. This is all about your libraries and how we can support you doing that. So these blog posts are great, but if Kate says, well, what about this scenario? We have revised our closing blog post numerous times with many examples. So we can revise these reopening to remember the other scenarios that we may have not thought of. So we love the fact that we get to help you, and please reach out.
Jay-Z, Andrew, anything that y'all are seeing in the media that you think the library make sure everyone's aware of for reopenings?
No, but thanks for asking. I'm trying not to consume any more media than I have to.
I meant like library media, the library world.
I just see a lot of people talking about like holds, really, like, you know, even if they're not physically open, how can we still allow people to come get their holds? You know, somebody earlier in the chat said they're doing the mail feature. Somebody asked about, like, I think somebody in Texas, I can't remember, I'm sorry who, but I remember somebody was putting them out on book carts and letting their patrons come and pick them up. So I know I've seen a lot of chatter, you know, even if they may extend to being closed for a period of time, but how can we still fulfill, you know, holds for our patrons and letting them pick it up? So, you know, I think if you come up with a great idea, share it with the community. And that's probably my saying, share it with the community, no matter what your idea is, because I'm sure there are other librarians and staff that are out there that are thinking the same thing that you are.
Yeah, and
yeah,
I was Catherine, yeah, and we love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that we're
Yep.
doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put in a promo for the ByWater's partners mailing list too. This is a perfect time to have some conversations on there and just say, hey, what are y'all doing? I saw that Christopher from Ajax up in Canada had posted on there today saying, hey, what are y'all doing for summer reading? As public libraries, I can only imagine what your children's librarians are going through right now. You know, trying to figure out how do we make this work. So that is something to kind of, you know, use that ByWater mailing list and ask for your colleagues. Or if you're not comfortable posting it to it, ask us, and we're more than happy to put kind of an anonymous post on there. Say, hey, what are y'all doing to gather information? So we're more than happy to do those sorts of things. Oh, Catherine, Summer Reading Prize of the Year, Jar Librarian Tears, right through the heart. Jeez. So Wendy did ask about consortiums. I be perfectly honest, because you know that's who we are. The biggest challenges we had when y'all were closing were with consortiums, because you have a consortium of 50 plus libraries and everyone is dealing with different issues and things like that. Y'all are the ones that I'm most honestly concerned about when we start reopening, because we did a lot of different things for the consortiums to make it work the way that each library wanted it to. So really just kind of the same process that we're talking about. With consortiums in particular, I would say it's going to be really important to talk to us so that we can make sure that we can tell you, yes, we can limit this by library. No, we cannot limit that by library. And so at least you know as you're going. So just kind of keep us in that loop, Wendy, of saying, you know, hey, we're going to be doing these sorts of things. You know, what do we need to be aware of? There's a variety of things, library transfer limits, message queues, all sorts of customizations that we can kind of walk through those with you and making sure that the libraries are opening as easily as possible. Let's see, yeah, so Amy mentioned that they've been using the purchase suggestions. So that's a great way. You know, we've always asked, we always tell our patrons, let us know what you want, and they never listen to us. So now they're finally giving that opportunity to go ahead and tell us what they really do want as far as material. So this might be a great way that they're going to be starting to do that a little bit more. Let's see, youth ebooks, yeah, that's something to be aware of. for those sorts of things. So yeah, I really do like those, that, and it's like Juan mentioned, we're doing things now that we probably should have been doing, just never got around to. And so now we are doing those sorts of things, and our patrons are really, really engaging us with us with a different way. I do have a question for y'all, and this is like a curious thing, which I'm sure a lot of folks are going to be talking about. We know computers are a huge thing in libraries as far as usage, and that's one of the things that our patrons do come to us for. What plans have y'all thought about as far as kind of keeping that social distance when you do let people back into the building? Because I know, like in the last library I worked in, that you had about, I think it was like 32 inches elbow to elbow. So what sort of things have you thought about? Okay, so let's see, taking away every other chair. That's a common one that I have seen. Hasina one-to-one appointments. That's an interesting idea. That's Hasina down in Citrus County here in Florida. Hi, Hasina. Rebecca is
Pasco,
reserving
Pasco.
Pasco.
Oh, Pasco. Sorry. I knew that.
They're neighbors. They're neighbors. They're neighbors.
Reserving every other PC. So again, kind of limiting those from place to place. Removing every other computer. Wow, Barbara, that's really taking it up a step, really kind of just moving that out. Chromebooks. Donna, that's one of the things that I was thinking about, is if that's something that would be becoming more popular now, is instead of saying this is where you have to sit, here's a computer, go find a space. So that's an interesting space. Moving spaces apart, making the staff intervention with that, limiting the total number of patrons in the building and every other chair empty. Yeah. Nancy is saying removing half the computers and renting in-house Chromebooks. I didn't even think about that being an option, but that's a great idea. Because we may not need this for long term, but that's a great way for being able to do that. Spacing out laptops around the building, removing every other keyboard and mouse. Wait, Samantha, don't your patrons do that for you on a regular basis anyways? Let's see, spacing. Red X's on the floor at checkouts. Yeah, it's amazing how people don't understand what 6 feet means, and that should be 6 feet all the time.
Donna, I'm a close talker. Like, I want to get close to somebody. So a red X is really what I need. I really have found myself like, oh, I am too close to you. But yeah, I think it's helpful to us close talkers.
And that's the thing, it feels rude when you're talking to your neighbor and you're a driveway apart. I'm like, no, I'm supposed to be up next to you. So yeah, that is a good thing. Actually, I did see, it was one of those really funny things that's going around with a guy walking around with like pool noodles on each side of his head, because that gives you that sense of space. Yeah. A little bit extreme, but hey, maybe I'm gonna do that one. Yeah. Okay, Stephanie does mention the problem with Chromebooks is when patrons need Silverlight and other things that are not available on them. Yeah, that is a concern. Removing tables. Yeah, Kate, my spatial sense is terrible too. Someone says, oh, it's 30 feet. I have no idea how that is. I will tell you the thing that has been most helpful is when someone said, stay a hockey stick away from each other. That I can visualize. I need those physical things. Taping human outlines on the floor. Sneeze guards. Barbara, I am curious, is that something that you had installed before, or that you're having done now? That is something that I am very interested in hearing about. Lisa has a self-checkout, thinks they may get another. Just another shout out that Koha does have that built-in self-checkout. You don't have to contract with a company to do that. You can put that basically together with any sort of PC and some sort of barcode reader. So it's pretty straightforward to be able to do that one. Had to suspend laptops because of lack of cleaning supplies. Yeah, that is a huge issue. Self-checkout at CERC, limiting patrons, the number of patrons that are in the building. Oh, Kate, I love that. Hoop skirts are making a comeback. And gloves. You know what? That's so funny. I've always said I'd love to go back to days where you wore a hat and gloves. I guess we're kind of getting there, aren't we? Although with my hips, I don't know that I need any hoop skirts. I just, have that space there. Self-checkouts and sneeze guards. Donna mentions we have 2 full desktops set apart from each other in addition to Chromebooks. Excellent. Barbara's looking into it. Okay, excellent. Sneeze guards. Catherine mentions that she has a photo at the pharmacy. They use a desk in front of their desk and tape on the ground. That's a really good idea. That physical barrier So no matter how close Kelly wants to be to talk to you, she still can't get any closer than that physical desk there. And Patricia does make a really good point of those Chromebooks need to be returned, and not just, or need to be cleaned, and not just the Chromebooks, but also the desks. And I know that at a lot of libraries, you do have those, canisters of Clorox wipes, but that was before, they all disappeared. So now it's going to be interesting to see how we're going to clean those when we don't have those cleaning supplies anymore. We have concern about people browsing, picking things up, and then putting them back. Do we quarantine the items as people put them back? That's a really, really good question.
Or just have a cart to say, please return these back to our quarantine spot.
Yeah. It's kind of hard because we've seen, I know that y'all have seen this too, is that there's conflicting data on whether or how long any sort of virus stays on this. And let's be realistic too. It's not just coronavirus at this point. It's also flu season, and there's also just the common colds going around and all of that sort of stuff. This is going to sound horrible, but I always think that libraries are dirty. I mean, I've worked in libraries for over 20 years, and that's just the reality, is that we know a lot of people touch stuff, and there's a lot of germs going around. So that is something to think about. I don't know, y'all, what do you think? Should Amy and everyone else have like a cart for things that people have touched? But then what about ones that are not they're putting them back on the shelf? That's a really hard question. Don't touch your face, which is what I'm doing. Jay-Z, stop touching your face.
I know.
Jessica is closing the stacks and emphasizing paging services. That's a terrific answer. If you have that ability to be able to do that sort of thing, close the stacks and send the pages materials as you can. Looking at partitions, divide up larger tables. One does ask if anyone's using their 3D printers to print the headbands for first responders, which is a really great thing. So let's see, Kate, not letting people browse at first, just coming in for specific things. Yeah, Stephanie hits that point exactly. A lot of libraries have always had those in-house bins, but not everybody uses those. Because here's the thing, I'm a librarian. If I'm browsing in stacks, I know where that book goes back. I'm going to put it back on the shelf. So let's see. Yeah, so Amy says that's going to go in the decision about when to open the building. CDC dude says the items are not your problem. I kind of agree with you, Catherine. It's me that's the problem because I keep touching my face. So Roxanne says, yep, quarantine those materials on the reshelving carts. I've got several. Okay, Kate, so yeah, I've done the same thing too, is when I go grocery shopping, I don't think about it. I pick something up to look at it, and then I'm in a quandary of, well, should I buy it or do I put it back on the shelf? So I've been putting it back on the shelf because I know that I've been using hand sanitizer a lot, and I'm going to go with the presumption that my hands are clean. Yeah, Kelly.
My anxiety is like high level, 100%. And now I feel like I'm in the right room with all these other people that have high levels of keeping our community safe. I mean, you're definitely in that position that you need to think about how your community can stay healthy and safe. So I'm glad you're all thinking about this. Somebody asked if we could send this chat out via email. So yeah, we'll take this recording and Jesse will do something with it and put it out there.
Yep, we'll put it on the website and the recording, and I'll make the chat available as well. And then we can email it to all attendees.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to go out on a limb here, and Jessie doesn't know I'm doing this, so she might freak out. Would something like this be helpful to y'all in another few weeks?
Yes.
As we're a little bit closer, would y'all like to be able to do this again? And if you, yeah, we're already getting responses. Okay. So Jessie, you're on the hook for this. We'll set another one up in a few more weeks. And maybe we'll just do it periodically throughout the summer or something, to talk about how things are going and just kind of make these communications. And if you can attend, that's great. And if not, that's fine too. The number one thing I want you all to remember is we're here for you. So ask us, don't think that any question is too small or too silly. ask us whatever your concern is, and we'll either answer it for you, we'll find the resources for you, and things like that. And actually, Kate has a really good point. For those of you that are opening quickly, we're looking at you, Catherine. We're going to want to hear your experiences and really kind of, what things to look out for, what's working and what's not. And as Stephanie says too, as libraries open, they're going to think of other issues that we haven't thought about. And so that's really going to be the important things to be aware of. Especially with academics, as you are hitting that end of year cycle, going to be some other things to be aware of. So, all right. Thank you all so much. I'm going to stop talking finally. I know you're like, hallelujah. I'm going to turn this over to Jessie for the rest of the time.
I just want to share one thing, because we had a couple people asking about this. You probably see all the education material that we send out about what's going on with Koha that's directed towards staff and librarians. But if you come to the education page, there's a whole section on Koha videos for patrons, and these are directed just at your patrons, not at really staff. So if you scroll through here, this has everything from logging in, resetting your password, placing holds, how to use the cart feature, how to use the list feature, and everything in between. Please feel free to use these videos. If somebody just talked about the purchase suggestion. If you're not using it and you want to turn the feature on and share it with your patrons, or it's underutilized, there's step-by-step instructions in here, and most of them have videos too. So please feel free to come in here and grab those as well. Okay, we will share this recording with all of you, and we will schedule another one coming up here soon. And if there's anything that we can do, please feel free to get in touch with us. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Kelly. And Andrew's already left, but we'll pass that thanks on to him as well. And thank you. Stay safe out there, everyone. Take care.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.